All right, folks, here we are again. Instead of doing a live session this week, as promised, we are doing a recorded piece where we're going to take the shoes that we produced in our last seminar, and we're going to do UVs for those, and maybe if we have time, set up surfaces for materials and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, joining me in this one is our dear friend Gina, who you guys probably have seen if you've been coming to the seminars, the live stream and all that. You probably see her in the chat window pretty regularly. So say hi, Gina.
Hi.
Yeah. So. So anyway, we've got DAZ Studio open. We have a Genesis 3 female loaded in, and we have the shoes already in place from last week. So I'm going to select these shoes and send this over to Zbrush. We're going to jump on in with our UVs. So we'll give that just a second to fire up Zbrush. And here it comes. And Bob's your uncle. So I'm going to toss these out onto the stage. And I actually have some flipped normals in those, and that's not cool. So I want to correct that before I do anything else, which is probably going to irritate me. And I may end up, I don't know, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. So let's just grab that and that, because I can see where the flipped normals are. I'm wondering, this would be so nice. Yes. Oh, thank you, DAZ Studio, for having normal flipping in there. That is so handy. So let's try this again, shall we? I'm going to resave these shoes now that I've fixed the normals. DAZ Studio displays all your polygons as two-sided, so you can't really tell visually in here if you have flipped normals, and that actually kind of sucks. It's kind of cool in a way, because if you're not thinking about it, then you don't have to pay attention to it, but there's all kinds of things that having flipped normals will screw up royally when you try to work with a model, and not being able to see that they're flipped means they could be, and you don't know it until you go trying to do certain things. So since we had to deal with that, I'm going to go back over real quick how you can fix that in here. So we could see in ZBrush that the soles of these shoes had flipped normals. So if you find that, usually you'll find that by sending your geometry to another program of some sort. For us, it's most likely going to be in ZBrush. And if you see those flipped normals, we can go into the group editor, or the geometry editor, sorry. Sometimes old poser terminology still kicks into my head, because over there, the tool analogous to this would be the group editor. And so we'll select all of the geometry for the offending area, then right-click it and go down to geometry editing, and then hit flip normal of selected polygons, which we've already done. So now those are fixed, and we want to save our model back out. So saving, drilling way on down. There we go. Yes, I want to save that. Thank you. So now it's saved, and that will overwrite our geometry definition, and we can move on. So, and there we go. When we send it back over, now the normals are corrected. Yay. So from there, I'm going to turn on my polyframe, and most of the time if I'm doing shoes, I'll actually just work with one shoe and give it a nice full UV map, and then just mirror the shoe so that it takes the same textures across both. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just do UVs for the two shoes in one map. So let's take a look at how this is going to break down when we polygroup this. Right now it's going to be in one polygroup, because when things come over from DAZ Studio, that's how they come over, is in a single group. So we want to go to our polygroups menu and auto group this. And you'll see that we modeled this with closed shells for a lot of reasons. I really dig modeling that way. I like airtight models. There's a lot of points about modeling with that in mind. It helps you keep very, very clean topologies. So the thing that we're going to need to do is break this down, though, into separate poly groups that we can let UV masters shoot good UVs onto. And you have to sort of develop a feel for the way UV master likes to work, and kind of an integral part of that is how you break up poly groups, because it'll shoot UVs onto each of those poly groups. So each group will be a UV shell. So since we auto grouped this, I'm going to go over and hit merge similar groups. So now it will take identical groups, or groups that are identical, just mirrored, and it'll put them into the same poly group, which makes it much easier to work with. So I'm going to hold Control Shift and grab my select lasso, and then hit X to turn on symmetry. And most of what we're going to do, actually all of what we're going to do inside here right now working on UVs, is going to be nothing but poly group editing and breaking this stuff up so that UV Master can shoot good UVs on this. So right now we have our soles visible, and with our select lasso tool, I'm going to let it highlight one of these edges like so. And you can see that it will then hide, if I click, then it'll hide that poly loop all the way around. Then from there, I'm going to auto group that, and then I'm going to hit merge similar groups. So now we'll have groups here for the flat inside the sole. I'm not a big shoe person, so I don't really know what that area is called. Gina, if you know.
It's just the sole, the inner sole, if you have to.
The inner sole. It sounds so metaphysical. So we're gonna expand our selection once. That way we get that ring that we selected, and then we're going to polygroup that stuff. So now you can see we have the inner sole polygrouped. I'm gonna go into my my Deepak Chopra voice, the inner soul. Then I'm going to select the outer soles and retract my selection a little bit. And I'm going back and forth between hitting Control Shift X and Control Shift S to expand or contract my selection. Then, and if you hear something come crashing, it's because there's a cat trapped in the office here with me, and I'm not going to let the little guy out because he can eat me. He's a cat. I pay for his existence. He should be grateful.
He's a cat. He won't be.
He's a cat. Yeah, exactly. He won't be. He's kind of a little bastard. So I've broken off the heel there just so that it gets a little more space. And I'm trying to decide if I want to break that up any other ways. But right now this will be a good starting point for the soles. So I'm betting that I'm probably going to end up actually putting these two groups back together. I'm probably going to end up doing that. There's a lot of trial and error in what we're going to do here. So let's take a look at the laces. This looks like a really complicated area to do UVs for, but it's actually not. We can break this up a few different ways. The way that I'm going to break this up, I'm going to hide just an edge ring around the end and then start contracting my selection until we have hidden all the way up into where the knot is, and then I will group visible, which I have a key command set for that, Control Shift G. I'll group visible, then I will keep shrinking my selection, and then I'm going to group visible again once it gets to a point where I'm comfortable with it. Then repeat that process all the way through back to the knot again, and then around to there. So now we should have a handful of polygroups for the laces, or for the actual bow. Next thing I want to do is look at my my laces, and even though like our model right here, we can see there's some little intersections and stuff. Those intersections actually go away once smoothing is turned on over in Dash Studio, so it's actually not. It is not an error you are seeing. It's actually correct. So we need to break up these shells. Since you could see inside these shoes, I decided to leave an interior, leave the interior mesh in there. So if I hide my edge ring going around the outside of that mesh and auto group it, then you'll see we get this broken into two shells right now. Of course, we'll still have the edge ring that we hid, so we'll need to make that and one of our shells visible again. I'm going to group that to the outer shell. I said I'm going to group that to the outer shell. There we go. Haha. So, and then let's do merge similar groups, just so I can make sure that when I select something, I get exactly what I want. Okay. So now that we have those separated, the next thing we need to separate is going to be the remaining laces running down the center. And that can get tricky because these have different edge loop counts for each one. So I'm going to keep everything visible and just start walking through these, holding Control and Shift and clicking on an edge to hide an edge ring going around. Now, if you have not modeled cleanly and you have, you know, some junk topology somewhere, then this will not work. You have to have squeaky clean topology for this to work. I cannot stress clean topology enough. Gina hears me talk about this stuff all the time.
On a daily basis.
Clean, clean, clean. Must have clean topology. And contiguous topology is a good thing too. Like where these connect in, there's so many benefits to having your mesh with everything connected and clean like that. So now Gina is sitting in with us, and Gina, if you have any questions or you see anything that I'm like rushing over too quickly, or if, just speak on up.
Okay.
Because
so far so good.
So far so good. So far so good. Okay, cool. All right. Sometimes you'll get in these little spots where you might have some mesh tucked inside other mesh, and you have to kind of play around just a little bit. Sometimes you gotta tease it and flirt with it a little bit to get what you want.
Yeah, it can be pretty irritating.
There we go. It's just show it some leg. It'll come along. And we're almost there with this set. We'll basically repeat this process for the interior laces, because if you were to swing around this model and look, the way that we've modeled these laces is we're actually bridging holes from the outside across the outer panels, and then bridging holes on the inside so that we create the appearance that these strings go, you know, all the way through. It's kind of my preferred way of modeling that sort of stuff these days. And this is trying to be kind of a turd. So there we go. Haha, I win. So this is kind of the slow, tedious part, because you do kind of have to do this edge by edge, you know, surface by surface. But it could be a lot worse. So once I've hidden all those, I'm going to group those, group the surfaces that are remaining visible. So now you'll see we have these laces running down the center. And it looks like maybe I messed up just a little bit. Yeah, right here. Right here. That is problematical. So let's just come back in here. I may need to turn off symmetry and look at just this side for a minute. That would seem to be the case. So if that happens, it's just a matter of tweaking things out a little bit more. A little bit of patience.
Or a lot, depending upon who you are.
Bah. This is... I don't think of this as a very difficult process anymore. Like, UVs used to be a giant nightmare. And like so many things, other things that I do inside Zbrush, it's just like, you know, thank God for Zbrush.
Admittedly, the mapping in here is pretty easy.
It helps so much. Of course, it would help if I actually made good selections. So I'm going to have to like back up a little bit. I'm holding Control Z down for a while because we're just gonna backpedal on this just a little further because ick. All right, that's fine. I'm just gonna make that its own poly group for now because this has decided it's gonna fight with me, which is fine. It's better. I think it's better to watch a demonstration of something and see it not go well sometimes than it is to see it, made to look super, super easy, because then, you could come along.
Because it's not always super easy. It's like a failure.
It's really not. And you'd be like, oh my God, I can't do this. Why can't I do this? And, I hear that stuff from some people.
From me on a daily basis.
Pretty regularly. Like, why can't I do this? It's so hard. I don't know what's going on.
I'm telling you, it doesn't work the same for me as it does in every video on the internet. I promise you.
It totally does. It's cool. Pardon me. It's all just a matter of trying to just be patient, get in there, mess with it. Spend some time with it. Show it some love. Clicking them little edges. Edge, edge, edge. So every once in a while I'll go ahead and group what's visible, because it's going to be way easier to toss the stray faces that I'm getting rid of here back onto my larger group than it would be to kind of do the opposite. So I want to make sure that I'm getting these laces grouped properly so that they can end up forming the shells that I need for the right map. Now I'm using a little shortcut here. This is kind of a little shortcut technique. So instead of having to click on every single edge ring going around here, I'm just going to zoom in on the inside and get rid of that edge ring, hide that, and auto group, because getting rid of that separated this piece from this ring. So then I should be able to just hide that stuff. So now we've got what we want right there. So the next thing is just going to be a little bit of cleanup, which is really easy to do now because we have a clean group for this one, a clean group on the inside. Okay. So now I'll just grab these, and I know that these two are going to be shared. We're going to share a poly group. Now we'll poly group these, and we're almost there. We need to repeat that process basically for the interior of the shoes. just out of curiosity, I'm going to try shrinking my selection back a little bit. Sometimes you can play around with this and get selections that become a little easier to work with. Yeah, like that. Like see how now this is a little simpler for me to see and deal with. Just because I selected some of that, made a selection, hiding some stuff, and then coming back through with making things visible and invisible, so that I can then see this stuff a little easier and get in here and find the parts that I need to hide, so that we're going to break this up into the polygroups we need. So it's kind of a monotonous process, honestly. It's one of those things that's just kind of a grunt work thing. And a lot of the stuff that I do is really prep oriented. Like I'm sure Gina probably gets tired of hearing this. Gina, for those who don't know, Gina and I work together pretty closely on a regular basis and have, off and on for a very long time. I think we've worked together for about 13 years now.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Let's not age ourselves, shall we?
Well, I'm still a child, so.
Well, at least you can admit that.
I mean, my father would tell you I was born an old fart, but I'm still a child. Okay, so something's not quite symmetrical here, because when I was making these selections on this side, it was accidentally clicking on stuff over here that I needed to keep. So I'm going to backtrack and turn off my symmetry while I get rid of these. On something that has really intricate little mesh bits like this, it's very easy for symmetry to kind of fall off. I don't worry about that too much anyway, because the real life is not symmetrical. I'm sorry, it's not. And, sometimes people are like, oh, this model's not symmetrical. And I'm like, yeah, guess what? Does it look good? Well, no. Does it look good? Does it look?
As long as it looks good and works good.
If it looks good and it works good, it is good. Done. End of story. So there. So now we have all of our laces into their own polygroups. I'm actually going to take one more step into those and just put all of them into a single polygroup. So we have bows, laces, outer shoe shells. Then we should have the interior shells, which it looks like I missed a lace right here. So let's make sure we grab that. Everything, I swear so often in 3D stuff, everything is preparation. Just prep. The more you set things up with good preparation, good clean topology, which clean topology is all about prep, the better you prep your meshes for certain kinds of commands and things, the better things will work. Like there's a lot of ways to do things where you don't prepare and you kind of wing it and you end up having to struggle and fight with things. And I get that sometimes in production you don't necessarily have the luxury of a ton of prep. But if you can, do it. If you can prepare things well, and really a lot of when I say prep, a lot of what I'm talking about is your mindset. Like, if you can be as conscious of clean topology as possible, then everything will go smoother. Just everything will go so much smoother. So there we go. So now we are ready to do our first UV projection and see what we get. So I'm going to go into my plugins, go to UV Master, turn on Symmetry and Polygroups, and hit Unwrap. And there we go. And let's see what we got. That's not bad. Yeah.
Not bad at all.
That is not bad. So that is kind of your first pass. Now, there's some things you're going to see in here that I personally am not fond of. I don't like the way it wants to break things up around these holes. I mean, you can work with that, and it's unwrapped well. The unwrapping is solid, but it's a little weird to look at. So I'm going to make a few little changes. So let's unflatten this, and I'm going to select my outer shells. And this is a nifty little trick. Okay, so over here in UV Master, we have an option we can turn on that says Use Existing UV Seams. Now, this might or might not work. A lot of times this will work, so we'll see. I'm gonna toss that out there before I do this, because it would be just my luck that I'm gonna be like, oh, let's do this, and then it'll say error, you know. And specifically, if it's going to throw an error, it's going to say you have closed UV shells or some garbage like that, and then it's like, well, okay, that's magical. But I'm giving the warning. It might not work, but if this works, then it's a great method. So I'm going to go into UV map over here and go down to create and have just these shells visible, and I'm going to actually destroy my UVs on these for a second by hitting UVP. That's UV planar. Now what that's going to do, it's going to shoot UVs onto this based on my camera angle, and since it's shooting those UVs on there, that means that what's visible is completely contiguous UV shells, and where in our previous UV map that you saw, these things were broken up around these holes, now they won't be broken up because they're all shot as one mesh. So now, if I, in theory, this should work, hopefully it will. So now if I do an unwrap again and I turn on Use Existing UV Seams, and we let that bake for a second, now it should keep intact the seams that were created when I shot those planar UVs. So let's flatten it, and we should see the difference. See now how those are closed up?
Oh, that was pretty. I didn't realize you could do the planar, cylindrical, and spherical in Zbrush.
Yep. All those are over here, and there's a bunch of other ones too. Like there's a PUV tiles, GUV and AUV tiles. Those all are pretty nifty. Let's see, which one is it? Group UV, Packed UV, Adaptive UV tiles is. I always get them mixed up. First off, so just so you know, and anything in ZBrush, if you want to know what it does, typically if you just mouse over it and hold Control, you'll get a little tooltip pops up.
It's very helpful. I use it a lot.
Yeah. So like UV tile will actually take every polygon of your mesh and give every single polygon the exact same space of UVs in your UV map. The problem is it's going to break every single polygon into its own UV shell.
That's a lot of seams.
And you basically have seams that look like your wireframe. But if your software can render it and doesn't like go, blurring your textures or doing weird, goofy, what's the word for it? I'm drawing a complete blank right now. If your software doesn't like try to recompress or rebuild your textures at runtime, then and it leaves them, as intact as they can be coming out of ZBrush, then actually that is, technically speaking, perfect UVs, because every single polygon gets exactly the space it needs. Every single polygon's broken up. There's absolutely no possible way for anything to be overlapping. The problem is, if you break it up and look at it, you're just going to see rows and columns of tiny little boxes that will make absolutely no sense to look at.
Yeah, texture artists everywhere would be up in arms.
Well, that depends. That depends. Texture artists in film and effects use that all the time, because they're probably working with PTEX out of Mudbox, or they're working with Polypaint out of ZBrush, or they're working with equivalent of PTEX or Polypaint out of Mari or Modo.
Okay, let me rephrase. Poser texture artists everywhere.
Yeah, poser and studio texture artists, folks who are used to old school types of UVs and stuff like that would absolutely freak out. If you're not using something that allows you to paint straight on the model, that UV method is just going to be horrible. And I kind of like to strike a balance. Like the UV Master shoots UVs that kind of use a lot of. I swear I think some of the math going on in the program behind UV Master starts from those projections and then works its way out based on how they're connected through the polygroups. That would make sense to me if that's how it works. And if that's not how it works, but someone hears that and gets an idea and is a particularly talented code monkey, I get 10% off whatever you make with that concept. So there you go. But anyway, so we've got a lot of different UV methods that we can use in here. Most of the time, though, I'm going to end up going back to UV Master. Even if I use some of these to like shoot something temporary, it's only because I know that in shooting these kind of UVs onto an area of the model, that's going to give me seams that I can then use through UV Master. So it's kind of I have a very holistic approach to this stuff where. Like I'm a firm believer that you want to use as many different parts of a program as you can in every way that you can. You have all these tools there. Use all of them.
And ZBrush has many tools.
Yeah, you know, inside ZBrush, you have modeling tools, you have texturing tools, you have posing tools, you have UV tools. Just there's tools everywhere, and
it's endless.
And the neat thing about it is so many of those tools actually can relate to other jobs. Like you wouldn't think about modeling tools being useful for UVs, but you're going to see in just a minute how they can be. So anyway, point being, kind of the idea that I want to make sure I get out there is, you know, don't just look at things and go, oh, I'm doing UVs, I have to use the UV menu. Or I'm doing UVs, I have to use UV Master. Now, use all of it. Because it's all there to be used, and it all could probably. There's so many different ways to put this stuff together. Don't be afraid to tinker and go, I wonder what this does when I'm in a UV mode, or stuff like that. Because it's experimenting like that you'll end up learning a lot of cool stuff. So I'm going to come back out. I want to shoot some more planar UVs because I could see where some of these eye holes right here were broken up, so I'm going to shoot planar on those. And that is that. And then we're going to unwrap again. And give it just a second. It's baking. It's unwrapping.
I was thinking it was the Food Network show Unwrapped.
So then we'll flatten that again. And there we see our little bitty holes are closed. Yay. Alright. Now it looks like we've got some little stray guys. So we're going to need to deal with them. We don't want their kind around here. Y'all need to get off my property.
I've been watching True Blood, like binge watching, and it's all in Louisiana, and you just sounded so much like you should be on that show. I was like, I can't even hold this in. I have to share.
I only let my accent out on rare occasions. So
I'm so amused.
Yeah, I am a Southern boy, born and bred. So there's no getting around it. I only learned to ditch my accent when I moved up north.
The North will do that to you.
Yep. Yep. Let's see. All right. So what I'm doing right now, I'm going to hide some faces from the backs of these lace groups, so that we get so that we can break them up so that they'll unfold a little more cleanly. Because I'm pretty sure that is where some of those little stray groups are coming from. Okay. So again, it's just all preparation. I do not have symmetry turned on. I do not want symmetry turned on because I know this is not symmetrical. So that's good. So I need to go through and just start hiding some of these edge rings. Hide me rings, hide them rings. Hide me some edge rings. Because there's not a whole lot to talk about when you're doing this part. It's just monotonous.
Unfortunately.
See, it's so great. I can pull out my southern accent, and then you get Gina, who's all like northern. I swear, like I know you're originally from Massachusetts, but sometimes I hear Jersey in there. I'm sorry, I can't help it.
I think it's pretty closely related sometimes.
It's like Jersey is a Massachusetts accent, but I don't know. It's just different. It's got some of that, some of that brackish Jersey swamp water going on in it, Like I love Jersey, but like the one time I've gotten to take my wife to visit up north, we stayed with a friend in Jersey, and
Rebecca was like, "No."
Well, and it's hilarious because Rebecca is she spent a lot of years in Florida, and I'm always telling her, I'm like, you remind me of folks I knew from Jersey, and apparently Florida is like the sunny version of New Jersey. It's where old New Jersey people go to die.
Oh, well,
and
there's that new every day.
Yeah, because everybody from New Jersey who gets out of New Jersey seems to end up in Florida. It's just kind of a thing somehow. So I think she picked up a lot of Joyzy from being down in Florida.
Which is just funny. Geographically, even, and the thought of Rebecca talking like that is funny as well.
It's great. It's great. Like she didn't pick up the accent, but man, she's kind of got Jersey girl in her.
Well, yeah, she doesn't take a lot of crap. I'm pretty sure that's where we're going with that.
I think it's deeper than that. I think it's somewhere deep down in her soul because, it's like a fashion sense thing almost. She's definitely got some Jersey girl fashion sense going on. Is all I'm saying. I love you, honey. Wherever she's at, love you.
Before she walks in the room and smacks you in the head, yeah.
She's gonna be like,
You! What are you talking about me for? I'm gonna kick your ass.
Most likely, yes.
and she would too because she's got that angry Jersey girl thing going on. But you don't mess with that.
Or she's just married to you.
You don't mess with that, man. Those chicks up there are vicious.
They can be, yes.
Vicious. Angry women.
Oh, if you've ever watched a reality TV that is born out of Jersey, it's an interesting watch. I will say that.
Oh, just so we don't lose people as we chit chat, because I am doing something here. There's a lot of repetitious steps, a lot of monotonous stuff. What I'm doing, so you know, is like there was this one little section that kind of was left stray here, so I'm trying to isolate it so that I can make sure that I can get that to have the UVs I want. So anyway. Yeah, I have not watched any of the Jersey-based reality shows. I'm sure I would be extremely amused.
I don't know. I find them amusing. I watched Jersey Shore for a little while, just because it was amusing to watch. Like, this is really your problems in life, because I wish I had these problems, was really my whole take on that. And all the Jersey shows were like that, drama, young people. My life is over something that we just laugh off kind of thing. Yeah. It's an interesting watch. It's obviously for ratings, but if you just want to laugh with no thought whatsoever, it's definitely something you should look into.
See, my favorite Jersey-related programming or whatever is pretty much anything by Kevin Smith.
Oh, I do like him.
Because, a good friend of mine from a long time ago used to play music with the guy. It was actually originally from Red Bank, and really, really funny stuff. Like he used to go to, I think Kevin Smith and Jason Mewes own a comic shop in Red Bank or something, or
I believe so.
Yeah, and because I know my friend actually had a bag hanging on a wall somewhere in his apartment that had a cartooning of Jay and Silent Bob on the bag, and it was like something's Red Bank, New Jersey, and I was like, oh, I've been by there. That's pretty cool, Red Bank, yeah, neat. So I used to go through Red Bank pretty regularly. When I lived up there, I used to live in New Milford, Connecticut, and I would drive up to Brewster, New York, and take the train through to go to NYC. And sometimes I would end up hanging out with friends, and we would go different places. And we ended up in Red Bank from time to time because of comic book related stuff, because I'm a dork. So there's that.
Aren't we all, though?
Good times in Jersey. Yeah, I had fun up there. Really did. 19, 20, 21 years old, running around the comic book shows. Can't complain about that.
Well, no.
All right. So I have a couple more of these little groups that I want to create. This is the tedious part. So I'm looking on the inside, these guys right here. I want to make sure that I get this interior edge ring right here. So I'm going to switch off to ZModeler, and this is another thing inside ZBrush. I love ZBrush, but sometimes it makes me mad. There are some things that should work and don't always work for one reason or another. This may be one of those. We're going to find out. I'm going to switch over to ZModeler, the ZModeler brush. I'm going to hold my mouse over a polygon, hit the space bar. I'm going to hit poly group and poly loop. Okay, so my polygon action will be poly group, and my target will be poly loop. And then the direction, you'll see that whenever you mouse over a polygon with ZModeler, you'll see a little orange line, and that is telling you the direction that the operation is going to perform in if it is a loop-based action. So I want my action to perform along this loop, and since I have polygons hidden, it would just stop at the end of where those connected polys are. And so if I click, well, see,
in theory,
it should work. In practice, it is not. See, because it's looking at hidden polygons when it shouldn't be, and that just sucks. That sucks a lot. That angers me. That's not the magical ZBrush moment I'm looking for. So let's see. Okay, we have an alternative then. This is one of those things. It's like ZBrush can be, it's super powerful, but it's also, it makes sense if you think about it. There's so many variables inside anything you're doing inside ZBrush. Every model is different. Every model, it just is. They're all different. There's all kinds of math. There's all kinds of things going on under the hood. So sometimes things are going to have hiccups. So as you get more experienced, you go, okay, well, this should work. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, well, let's do it this way. Let's back up, and we're gonna turn this car around and head another direction. So what I'm going to do here instead, since that does not want to play nice, I'm going to hold the Alt key and just click each of these polys while I'm in the ZModeler brush, and it will make a temporary group of those. Okay, so then I do believe that's all I need out of there. So now I should be able to just hide that orange group, and it should leave me the pink group and then that temporary group, which I keep swinging off screen there because the stuff is thin polys. So now I can just group that stuff all together, and now we should have our groups split up in a way that'll work a lot better. So let's unwrap.
I do want to ask a question that has nothing to do with UV mapping, but other people might want to know.
Okay.
ZBrush is full screen. We all know this. I've adjusted to it. But now, for some ungodly reason, it's not full screen. Like, my taskbar's at the bottom. I have no idea. Is there a button that you accidentally hit to make that happen?
Right here.
Yeah, I do that. I bring it all the way, but you can still see my taskbar, so I can't see the, like, even the brushes on the bottom, I can't really see them anymore. I don't know what I hit inside Zbrush or my computer in general, because I'm like that.
Are you in Windows 10?
Yep.
Okay, if you're in Windows 10, I'm not using Windows 10. I have avoided it like an unholy plague.
Maybe it's a lock of the taskbar.
I was going to say, you probably have your taskbar locked or forced to be always on top or something like that.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was an off the top of the head thing, because it's been the last couple of days, and Lord knows what I've done in the last couple of days to my computer or Zbrush, so...
Oh, yeah, I know. You brutalize those things. I feel so bad for your computer sometimes. I'm like, no, be kind to your machine, Gina.
Well, it hasn't gone out the window yet, and I really can't because it's new, so...
Yeah, we'll have to look into that shortly. So, let's see. So, I'm actually going to end up having to reproject those planar UVs, because right now, if I unwrap again with existing UV seams on, then even though I cut those new groups to allow for opening these up, it's not going to open them up as long as I'm still using the existing UV seams. So I'm going to turn that off, hit unwrap. So unwrapping. Now if we flatten that, we should have a few more. Yeah, you'll see that we have these little strips down here. So those little strips are the back sides of our laces. So I'm just going to kind of scan real quick, panning around here. So I can see that we don't have any of those tiny little groups that UV Master sometimes like to create, and that was the big thing, is I wanted to make sure we didn't get any of those little tiny groups that are such a pain to deal with. So we can unflatten that. Now let's shoot some UV shells for these so that we don't have those holes broken up. So we'll do that one, and we'll do that one. Now we're going to use existing UV seams, and we'll let it bake. And it's baking. And it's baking. It's still baking. Come on, Zbrush.
I know, I'm like, why is it being slow? They're not even high poly at all. Like, not even a little.
It actually has nothing to do with polygon count and everything to do with just Zbrush walking vertex by vertex through the topology. And like, yeah, and so whenever you have the stuff cut apart like that, and you're using those existing seams, it takes it a minute longer.
Oh, okay.
Because it's just the way it's got to pick through there. So now everything is busted up, and we have UVs that are pretty gosh darned clean. So the next thing that I want to go into, now that we have some clean UVs, is I want to show you how to use modeling tools inside UV Master to edit your UV layout. So, and this is kind of, it's not really necessary. Like, this is actually a pretty well-packed UV layout right now. Everything's nice and proportional. You would get really good texture results out of this. But a lot of folks, if they go looking at the UVs on things, especially if you're doing stuff that's commercial products in the poser and dash studio market, a lot of folks like to look at the stuff and dig in, and that's cool. And if they look at the UVs and they see something, the layout looks like this, sometimes they're like, oh, why does that layout look like that? And they get kind of funky about it. So, and there is something to be said for having a quote unquote cleanly laid out set of UVs, so that you know what section is what when you look at it, if you go looking at a UV map. I virtually never do any texturing anymore with old-fashioned UV templates. I just don't. I don't see a reason to. If you've got ZBrush, Mudbox, or Modo, or Mari, if you've got any of those kind of tools, there is virtually no reason to ever straight edit a texture anymore. Thank God. I despise that stuff with a bloody passion for so many reasons. And my main tool of choice is always ZBrush. So that in mind, let's go in and do a little bit of UV cleanup here, a little bit of layout work, just because we want to tidy things up a little bit. So just like in any regular view, really the UV master view is still a regular modeling view. It just has a grid popped up. You're looking at the floor. If you look, whenever you go into UV master, it turns on the floor. We can actually turn that on and off. But that
I never noticed that.
the floor is representative of a single tile of UV space. And if you're not familiar with what that means, it's kind of an important concept. You see, UV space, really, UVs only exist inside coordinate space from 0 to 1. So like this lower corner of this grid is coordinate numbers 0, 0. It's U0, V0. If you go back to like, I guess probably 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade math, when you first have to plot something on a graph, of course back then they're using X and Y, we use U and V because once we go into 3D we have X, Y, and Z. That's why this is called UV instead of XY. But if you go back and you think UV is analogous to X and Y from when you were kids, well, this point in the lower left corner is your origin point. That is 0. And this guy up here on the diagonal opposite corner is 1, 1. And everything in between is in values from 0 to 1. As soon as you get past 1, you're lapping back over. So if you went from 0 to 1 right here, and then you went over, say, 0.5, so you went from 0 to 1.5, the point existing at 1.5 is actually right here. Dead center of this line. It laps back over. That's why UVs tile. That's why you can put, that's how tiling textures work. Is if you have a tiling texture, you have an image map that the sides and top, the side to side and top to bottom edges all match, right? So then when you turn up the tiling value on something, all that's doing is increasing or decreasing the use of that UV tile space so that it will translate that map across a model. So, and there's a lot more theoretical stuff we could get into about the way UV mapping works and what UV mapping is, but that's kind of a quick understanding. Hopefully it makes sense. A quick kind of excursion into that a little bit, because I think it is something that a lot of folks just do not understand, and it's really important. The better an understanding you have of that concept, I think the more capable you're going to be of creating solid UVs. And also, the more other concepts, especially inside ZBrush, are going to make sense to you. For instance, poly painting. Well, when we poly paint, let's say you bring a Genesis 3 figure into ZBrush, and you're going to poly paint on it. Daz has, this is something they've done with the Genesis figures that I adore. I'm like, thank you guys. I want to pet somebody in the head for this. They broke up their UV maps, the maps they use, into very logical tiles. So if you go and look at a G3 figure when it comes in, UV space 0 to 1 is going to be, I'm pretty sure it's the face. Then from 1 to 2 is going to be, I'm going from memory here, I think going to be the legs, either the legs or torso. Anyway, when you're doing texturing inside ZBrush, you can bring in a model that has multiple tiles, and ZBrush will output your poly paint and intelligently save out maps that correspond to each tile. So you don't have to sit there and worry about busting it all up and doing a lot of goofy crap we used to do. But that only works if the model's UVs have been moved in unit space. So So like you have to have anything that takes up a tile needs to be moved off to its own tile space. So as a good comparison, if you compare the UVs in a G3 figure to the UVs in, say, V4, V4 uses multiple maps, right? But if you load that in and you look at those UVs, like you do a texture check inside the texture menu in here, you're going to get so many errors, it's going to look like a garbled mess. And that's because her textures, her UVs, are in, those different maps are all stacked. And it doesn't matter in a program like Poser or Daz Studio if the UVs are stacked like that, because wherever they're stacked, you're going to have different materials, and the different materials call different images that correspond to the UV for that layout, if that makes sense.
It does make sense.
So with the G3 figures, and because Daz is very conscious of a ZBrush-based workflow, thank you, Daz, they've looked at that and said, oh, well, of course, this makes sense. With V4, you've got some hoops to jump through, to make that work. You can't use multi-map exporter with her. There's all kinds of, like, I did an entire 2-hour DVD some years ago on nothing but texturing V4 with ZBrush. If anybody's interested in that, I can probably make it available again somewhere. I don't even know if it's out anywhere still. But I did a DVD strictly about that, because there are specific hurdles. There are a bunch of hurdles specific to her and this method that are just annoying. And they fixed that. With the G3 stuff, they've totally fixed that. They've broken it up into the appropriate UV spaces so that you can do all that kind of work inside ZBrush and just hit a button and it'll spit the maps out. And not only will it spit them out, but when they come out, they'll actually have a numerical code appended to each of the maps it creates that is the order they need to be loaded into the program in. It's quite sexy. So, but that's actually, it's UV related, which is why I'm talking about it. It's something else that I'm going to do some videos on at a later time, because I think it is incredibly handy. Folks who want to do textures, want to do character textures, all that kind of stuff, there's so many different ways that plays into things. And but an understanding of it kind of starts with where we are here with UVs. So anyway, now that I've gotten kind of sidetracked with that, I want to get back on point here with what I was starting to show, and that is editing UVs using modeling tools. So what we're going to be doing now is repacking all of this into a more logical UV layout. And there are a few different things that we're going to touch on as we do that. First off, even though we're looking at UVs, since it's all based in polygroups, we can hide and show any of our groups the same as we could if we were just modeling.
That's one of my favorite things.
So you can do a lot of cool things with that. There's some of our UVs here that we're actually going to edit the UVs themselves. And some we're just going to leave the same, but probably change their position a little bit. So let's start out. I'm going to start out with my larger shells, like that. I'm going to make those visible. Now here's one of my favorite nifty little $64 tricks in here. Is if I go into my brush menu, which normally you get to up here, but I have it docked. Anybody's watched some of my videos, gets used to my interface, you'll know it's over here. And I'm going to go into auto masking. I'm going to turn mask by polygroups up. Now, that's a brush menu, but we're editing UVs, you say. Well, we're using the tools. So this is kind of an interesting thing. What you do inside this menu also relates to your transpose tools. So if we turn up mask by polygroups, and then we grab a move transpose tool, whatever the first polygroup we click on now, whatever polygroup we click on, is going to be the only thing that affects.
It is very handy.
So then the same is true for scaling or rotation, which I'm going to go to rotation right now. I'm just going to rotate that around and then switch back. And as long as I don't click on anything else, that's still the active polygroup that we're working with. So I've moved that. You can see we've got some overlap there. We're going to take care of that in just a moment. Next thing I'm going to do is grab what I can tell is the outer soles. And let's just move those over into the corner. I'm going to grab these guys, and you can move stuff off from the UV space here too. You can move stuff off like temporarily just to get it out of your way. So I do that all the time.
See, that I didn't realize.
Yeah, you can move that stuff off. Just you got to move it back inside the bounds before you're done, or when you unflatten, it will force it all in, and you'll get some really janky stuff going on.
It's unnecessary, yeah.
So I'm going to move this guy in, and then I'm going to mask this one, so then I can just grab his little buddy right here and swing him around, get something a little more logical looking. Then let's do the same with these guys. Eep. Okay. And I haven't scaled any of these at all. I'm just kind of repacking them in place. Now, these right here, I could zoom in and just kind of mask one of these and move them around that way. But this is a good opportunity to show you another nifty little trick inside here. And that is that we can use polygrouping inside UV Master. So here I've got only this shell visible, and I'm just going to come back here. There we go. I'm going to auto group it. So now those two shells are separate groups, which then makes it easier to move them back around. And then I'll just group them back together when I'm done. So then let's just move some of this around. And sometimes you got to play around to find a layout that works right for you, you know. It really is just a matter of, you know, personal taste and something like this. Right, so we're going to move that in there. And I'm a little bit outside my bounds at the moment. We're just not going to worry too much about that just yet. Okay, so now let's move that one in. We can move that guy in. Then I'm going to show you something and then undo it, but this is another handy little tool, is that we could take the Move Topological brush and actually...
Yeah, I've done that.
You can actually respread your UVs. You can also mask, like something I'll do sometimes if I think something needs to be spread or evened out, is I'll mask some UVs, and then so I'll get some masking like that, and then I'll use polish. And you'll see how it makes things come out very even.
Yeah, I do like polish.
So I'm going to mask this stuff just mostly so it's easier to see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to invert what's showing, and now I've got all these tiny little groups. Ugh. Yep. So let's just pick one of these, since we know they're going to be pretty similar. And then I'm going to auto group it so that they all become their own little shells. And I'm just going to start taking my Move Transpose tool and just click on one of these little guys, move the stuff. And all I want to do here is just kind of move
them all into the same area.
Yeah, just moving them all into kind of the same area. So welcome to the tedium of UV editing. But at least it's not like you're having to actually go through and cut and splice and do all kinds of goofy crap to get them, you know, together.
I used to, for the longest time, only do UVs with UV Mapper Pro.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's I can't even talk about it. It's very traumatic.
It hurts me for you.
It's very painful. once in a while I go in there to do like something simple or just look at a map and see if it came out all right. But that's it. I only have it for memory's sake because no.
I probably haven't opened that program in 7, 8 years.
Wow.
I mean, the other thing too is, you know, where I also use Maya, and when in doubt, like most everything anymore, I can get almost everything I ever really, well actually no, I can get anything I ever need to do done inside ZBrush, really. There are some tools inside Maya that are a little more powerful at times, a little just to get things done faster. So sometimes, you know, like I'm not doing demonstrations on Maya just yet because, you know, I mean, honestly, most people watching these probably don't have Maya.
No.
But at some point you're going to see me doing some Maya related stuff, because I think it's okay for me to talk about this now. Even though they're changing their name, I'm approved now to do tutorials for digital tutors. So at some point, I think
It's like Pluralsight now or
yeah,
something.
they're changing the name to Pluralsight, and I'll be doing some tutorials for them, which is pretty nifty. I'm kind of excited about it.
Should be pretty good.
So there's some good stuff coming there. Now, here's something I'm going to do. Like some of these, I like that these guys here are all kind of lined up the way I want them, but they're just spread out funny. So I hit Control W, and it makes a poly group based on masking, where I just drew a little mask around them.
Now, is that the actual shortcut or one that you made up?
I'm pretty sure that that's an actual, like, default shortcut. So, let's see. Oh, no, there I accidentally had something unmasked. Alright, so there's that. Then, going to move the rest of these guys in. There should be only like 2 batches of these little slivers that we need to do, because we had one set that was the back side of the laces, and then the other set was the front side. And the front side actually had 3 polys around each strip, and should have unwrapped probably a lot more smoothly, and will be a little easier. But I want to make sure that we get these all, you know, in place before we go messing with that. So let's see. There we go. And let's move you over here. And we should be just about good with these. I want to make sure that when we move these, we don't end up with them overlapping, because that's bad. Okay, overlapping UVs are bad. Alright, so I'm going to group all those back together now. And then we can grab that poly group and just move it out someplace. Once I've got them packed into a rough kind of rectangular shape, then in the end it'll be much easier to pack this stuff the rest of the way. Alright, so now let's just auto group all of these. And I'm going to do a little bit more here with just masking and moving things so that they stay kind of together in their little bundles. This I don't really mind. Because there's going to be very little distortion in these, just by the nature of the way UV Master works. So let's just move these guys. And also, you know, I don't want to get too granular with this, because if I could sit there and get super anal about all these little groups and take a really long time with that, So I don't want to eat up a lot of time with something that's really just kind of repetitious stuff in that way. But I did want to make sure that I show, this is how you can edit, edit UVs inside UV Master using modeling tools, using transpose tools, all kinds of stuff like that. So we covered the move topological. We're using right now. I'm using the move and rotate tools almost exclusively. And then once I get these all packed together, and I'm gonna call it, I'm gonna call this done pretty soon. Even though I probably could get a little more finished, a little more polished pack job done on this if I really, really wanted to.
I mean, the basic concept is there, and people can get as nitpicky about it as they want.
Exactly. So let's just take a look at where we're at. Getting pretty close here, I think. So I am going to finish up just a few more little tweaks here. Find some spots to shove some of these shells into. You got to make sure that if you use the rotate transpose tool, by the way, that you don't go in the middle, because it's actually going to flip that flattened mesh around and do weird stuff with
I've done that so many times.
Yeah, it can be problematical. Let's move that. Send you down here. Let's grab you. Let's put you over here. Let's grab you. Swing you around. And we are getting there. Oh yeah, definitely getting there. So let's swing this guy around, put him in place from here. Then I'm going to group all of those together. And now let's take a look at our layout. Something to keep in mind, if you're using the rotate transpose tool and you hold the shift key, it will lock it to 15-degree increments.
That is handy.
So let's bust this one up a little bit and maybe do this. Okay, let's grab this guy. This is always something you just you gotta mess around with UV layouts. So there, I think this is starting to be quite the logical layout. So I'm going to take this, and this is kind of interesting. Here's an interesting little thing. We can just show or hide like any other kind of mesh inside Zbrush, and then if we hold Control-Shift-X, then it's working with the shells as if they were just any other polygroups. So then we can use that to very quickly create a little more logical groups and give ourselves easier ways of working with stuff. So I'm going to call that finished.
It's a pretty nice map.
So now that it's done, I will go back to my plugin menu, go back to UV Master and hit Unflatten. Then I'm going to switch off to a skin shade material, turn on my polyframe, set my UV map to 4096, and then under texture map I'm going to do a new from UV check command. And then we'll turn off polyframe, and we should see some pretty clean wires in the map itself. So if that comes out pretty clean, then you should be good to go. So now I'm going to turn off that texture, and we're going to hit Control G to go Z this back over to Daz Studio. And we're going to update an existing object, going to hit accept. We're going to turn off update geometry and turn on update UVs. And hit accept, and now the UVs we just made inside ZBrush are now on these shoes. So when we save these shoes out, okay, let's just select those shoes, and we'll save them out. Daz Studio will update the UV data in the geometry definition.
Just helpful.
Yes. From there, we could come in and use all the cool stuff in here for poly painting and texture the crap out of these things, which, you know, we could go into. We could spend quite a bit of time on that. So I really just wanted to focus on the UVs for now. Maybe I'll come back with just another standalone video at another time that kind of puts something together for the texturing on these. But
I think a lot of people would like a poly paint tutorial.
yes, I've gotten some requests for that, and so, but before you can poly paint, you got to have good UVs. So now that we've gotten the UVs, I think I'm going to use these shoes to do another video. Maybe I'll just stick one out there in between seminar videos and all that kind of stuff. Because definitely a poly paint video, something dedicated to it. Maybe let's just use this. Let's say basics of poly paint, because there's basic levels of poly paint and a basic understanding of it. I think it'd be really cool to just put down in a video like this, and then that will give us a springboard for when we're doing the more advanced stuff, the real sexy stuff.
Yeah, poly paint, just to be, you know, like a general intro, would make a lot of people happy, I think.
Well, we will. I think we'll do that. Now that we have a model here, I think we've got a few people who have kind of followed through on this with us in the past seminars, and I've been seeing some really cool stuff. All you folks who've been sharing, I can't even speak. You folks who've been sharing, images with us on Facebook of shoes and stuff that you're making, you know, congratulations. It's very cool to see people taking what we're doing and using it like that. And so this, hopefully what we've gone over today will help you take those models and push them a little further with UVs. And then we'll do another video soon that gets into the basics of poly paint, the fundamentals of poly paint. I am a huge advocate of using poly paint. I love it. I know some.
It takes me a couple minutes to figure out, like, to be in the right tool to get it to work and stuff each time I do it. But then once I do it, it's super easy, and I was even shocked. I thought, like, oh, you have to put in textures and all this stuff. You don't, because honestly, just using the different brushes, I was like, hey, that looks like leather. Mm-hmm. It's really not. I make everything complicated, and if I can figure it out, I think anyone can.
Well, and there's also ways. Well, there's the basics of poly paint that we'll cover. They'll show you how to set up poly paint, how to start painting, and how to combine sculpting with painting. That's really where poly paint, in my opinion, gets just crazy powerful. I mean, already just the nature of poly paint, you get to ignore UVs for the most part at that point. Like, you want good UVs set up, but if you have good UVs, then you don't have to worry. Like, if there's a place where two shells meet and you would normally have a seam, with poly paint you really don't have to worry about that a whole lot.
Yeah, you're just painting right over that seam and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you just go right over it. But so you've got your UV set up. Then you're going to go into poly paint, and I'm going to show you how you can be dropping color into your model at the same time as that you're actually sculpting at the high resolution. And like, sometimes I'll refer to it a little differently than what people, especially in this stuff with Poser and Daz Studio, might have heard. I'll refer to it as, like, I'll say texturing, and really what I mean is painting. But then I'll say surfacing, and surfacing is actually sculpting surface details. Like if it's a character, it might be, you know, pores or scars in the skin, or if it's, you know, something like shoes or boots or pants or something, it could be sculpting in, you know, tiny seams or folds or all kinds of stuff like that. And sometimes you don't want that stuff to necessarily show up in the color. And it's really neat. I mean, it's like we used to have, it used to be that our maps almost always had things like folds and shadows and all kinds of stuff kind of baked into the map. And sometimes there's still a call for a bit of that, but nowhere near as much as it used to be, because we can do nice normal maps that play really well with these render engines, especially iRay, and give us some really beautiful results without a whole lot of work involved. And the nice thing about that, in my opinion, is, you know, it's like as the tools have improved, now we can do this stuff with very minimal effort and get a certain degree of quality out of it, which then means we put in a little bit more effort and we should be getting even higher quality. So we'll deal with the basics and we'll get you guys started with that and kind of get your feet wet in polypaint, and then we'll probably do a live seminar at some point that actually gets into just blowing the doors off of some of the stuff you can do with it that maybe you wouldn't think about normally. So, but I think, Gina, unless there's anything, like you get any questions, or if there's anything that you think I need to touch on before we call this one done.
No, I don't think so. I think you covered everything. I didn't have any questions. I actually understood it, so that's a plus.
Cool, awesome. Well, I hope folks dig this, and if you guys like the format of this, I like having somebody like Gina on hand to kind of talk a little bit with and bounce back and forth with on the stuff. And if you guys dig that and you learn some stuff from this video, let us know. Remember to like and share the videos, and you know, we'll be back next week with another live seminar. And if you dig the videos in this format, let us know, because it might be something where we start releasing more like this, as well as the live stuff. So anyway, thanks to CGBytes for you know, having me come do this stuff, and thanks to them for giving you guys, you know, a cool place to sell stuff and all that crazy jazz. So anyway, until next time, I'm Les from Sixus1. And this is my buddy Gina. Say bye, Gina.
Bye, Gina.
So this is my buddy Gina, and you know, we're here for CG Bytes. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.